Good morning, team. Welcome, everyone. Today's webinar for IT cybersecurity for small businesses using the Microsoft Security Score. What is it? What it's all about? Kick off at 10, so I'll give it maybe 50 more seconds, and then we'll get cracking in here. It's really funny, hey Josh, because we moved to a new office recently, and I'm in the meeting room area, but there's like half the meeting room is dark and then half the meeting room is light, so you can see this like ray of sunshine. I feel like I'm in a basement and like there's like a bit of light on my face, right? Which is quite funny. All right, cool. We'll get cracking. So again, thanks for joining us today, team. What I will do is I'm going to share my screen here and let's jump on. You can see my screen okay, Josh?
Yeah, it's all good.
Cool. All right, team. So we're Blackguard. We're an IT support company based in Brisbane here, and my name is Matt Hayward. And my next screen's there. We go. My name is Matt Hayward. I'm the director of Blackguard, and I've got my handsome tech with me, Joshua Destora today, who's our level 2 help desk technician. I kind of feel a little bit bad because I sort of roped in Josh at the last minute to this webinar. I'm like, hey, Josh, I'm doing a webinar on Microsoft, the security score. We're talking cybersecurity. Can you come in? And Josh's natural answer was, do you have a list of questions you're going to ask? What's going on? So sorry, Josh, roped you in, but he's going to do a great job. And he's on us today. I'm the director of Blackguard, like I mentioned, but honestly, people far smarter than me, such as Josh, who actually do the tech work and go through the score and do the remediation checks and do the real nuts and bolts, is guys like Josh. So I'm just here to sing and dance, and Josh is going to actually talk about some of the technical stuff as we go through it in this webinar today. I want to keep it sort of short and sweet, so we've got 30 minutes, and then the last 15 minutes for Q&A for any questions as well. But I just want to give an overview and kind of keep it more conversationalist, and I promise this isn't going to be a death by PowerPoint presentation. The Microsoft Security Score, firstly. So what is it? ChatGPT, funnily enough, I punched this into ChatGPT and said, give me the most simplistic explanation of what the Microsoft Security Score is. And it pumped out this. And honestly, it's pretty good, right? It's a Microsoft Security Score that determines how secure or safe your Microsoft 365 environment is. Does this apply to people who use Gmail or G Suite or other systems? Well, maybe not, but I would also argue that I don't think I've seen a business that doesn't use Microsoft in some fashion, right? So, for example, I see people who have their emails with G Suite, but they have Microsoft Word, Outlook installed on their Mac device or on their Windows device. So, because of that, and maybe they just installed the product, they still, I guess, need to be concerned about the security score in some fashion. You have people who have the full-blown Microsoft suite. They have OneDrive, they've got their emails, they've got SharePoint, they've got a lot of different moving parts in Office 365. So the secure score is more applicable to them, definitely. But I don't know. I guess I would argue, yeah, everyone. I don't think I've come across a business that hasn't used or doesn't use Microsoft in some small fashion, right? So more applicable to some and maybe not as much to others, but still important to know, I think. What about you, Josh? But there's a lot of standards out there, and on the screen, some of these standards you might have heard of, ISO standards or the NIST standards, and these frameworks are what they're called. These frameworks which talk about how to align your IT business, what strategy to use, how to protect your data, and these rules of how to do it depend on where the data is stored and who's accessing it. I don't know about you, Josh, but an open question, like have you noticed, because you've been around the IT traps for a while, like have you noticed there just seems to be like more, I don't know, like more acronyms and like more standards of certifications and frameworks to adhere to?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to keep track because there's like, uh, what should I follow, right?
Right. I mean, it's hard enough for us to follow and keep up to the latest. So I kind of feel bad for businesses that aren't IT companies or, their company isn't in this space about following frameworks. Because I almost feel every other week there's some sort of standard to follow. And the Microsoft Secure Score, while it's not necessarily a framework, it often overlaps and fits in to the other standards out there, right? So if you want to become ISO compliant, then the Microsoft Security Score and aligning and getting a score to that, a high score that we're going to touch on shortly in a live demo, it sort of briefly touches on that area. But man, there is a lot of different moving parts, I think, with standards and we hear this every day, right? Like cybersecurity is getting worse is getting tougher to protect your systems and this, which sort of brings me on the next point. And I wasn't really sure if I should include this slide. I'm like, does this sound like my personal political opinion? But you know what? I'm going to go there, baby. And this is a quick slide where I've said cybersecurity versus security. And 20 years ago, when I was first job in IT and I was 19, security always existed, right? Like there was always whatever we did, we spoke about security, and we had to secure our systems and our networks. And the term cybersecurity is a relatively new term, but it's no different at all to security of what it once was. Like we still had to protect our systems and our people. And maybe my opinion, but I think the term cybersecurity is based on the advent of cloud applications. So you go to a browser, Google Chrome or Internet Explorer, you type in a link, you go to a portal, and you use a cloud-based application. And I feel the term cybersecurity is a new term because of those cloud-based applications. Whereas 20 years ago, you might recall, for those of us in the webinar, you'd have that clunky on-site server and it was dusty in the corner and it was behind a locked cabinet and there might have been a skull and crossbones in the door not to enter, and we had to protect that stuff and everything on it. But it was still cybersecurity. We just didn't call it that. We just called it security. I don't know. Do you reckon, Josh? You've been out of traps for a while. Like, am I on the wrong path here, or what do you think?
No, I mean, in the past, we didn't really have AI. We didn't have those cloud-based applications that add to our cybersecurity pretty much. So yeah, I mean, in the past we only had it like installed locally, and the internet was really not that advanced either yet. So yeah.
That's true. That's very, very true. I remember the common methods of attack that we see today still existed, and I guess the term phishing and someone trying to obtain your data or an unfair advantage by phishing and trying to via email start a relationship in a conversation. That has always been there, but certainly there's been new attacks in the last 5 years, definitely. But a lot of the old attacks are still the same. And I suppose the one major shift in the marketplace is that it is true that businesses of all sizes need to be concerned. I remember that back in the day, back in the wild west, that there would predominantly larger businesses would be targeted simply because they had more money, there was more users, there was more data to extract. But that's not really true nowadays. I've definitely seen one-man bands compared to 1,000 employees need to be just as concerned about security. And with AI, it's a little bit spooky. It's a little bit scary because it is a double-edged sword. Like we can do some really cool stuff with AI. And I think Joe Rogan, the popular podcaster, he spoke about this on his podcast recently about some of the amazing stuff he can do. I don't know if this is necessarily true. I haven't looked up the stats, but he said on his podcast recently that I think it was this year that AI/Chat GPT is by the end of the year predicted to be smarter than every single person on Earth combined. Like you join every human on Earth, right? Join every human on Earth in our collective intelligence, and AI/Chat GPT is going to be smarter than that superhuman if we all combined. So that is both terrifying and amazing. And also, like, maybe I'm getting slightly off track here, but President Donald Trump in the US has announced a $500 billion package for AI, and he's really released the floodgates in terms of Elon Musk and what he can do. Elon Musk is obviously a huge contributor towards ChatGPT. He was one of the early investors. So we're going to see a lot more innovation in terms of the AI space and a lot of the amazing, cool stuff it can do. But it is also a double-edged sword, right? Because, well, it can do cool stuff, but I guess like anything, like any weapon perhaps, or any technology, it can be used as a weapon as well. I don't know. Does that sound too far, Josh? Am I really getting the shadow of this conversation, or is that a fair statement? Do you think?
Yeah, that's really fair. Just a few days ago, actually, there was a Chinese company. It was like a startup company called DeepSeek, um, and they they mentioned that they're able to create an advanced AI with older hardware. So um, that's why Nvidia stocks went down, because Nvidia is like they're like the main manufacturer of AI chips nowadays. So um, it's kind of scary in a way that if we can create an AI this advanced with just older hardware, then what can we do with newer hardware, right? Like maybe Skynet is just around the corner.
Yeah, that's true. I do remember the DeepSeek, which is it's like the competitor of ChatGPT, except it's Chinese owned, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I remember that, and there were some concerns around security as well. Like, well, actually, if it's Chinese owned, and I think there is a rule in China that all companies they have to share their data with the Chinese political party. So there was concerns around that. But you're right. I'm thinking that maybe Josh, you and I should maybe just try and maybe make friends with robots. Maybe we should try and establish some sort of relationship so when Skynet does come, hey, we're going to be in their good books, right? And if the rest of the humans are enslaved, well, hopefully we can have a step above that rung and be like the, I don't know, first class slaves or something like that. Or maybe as an IT company, we can try and protect ourselves and do this. And sorry, team, I know we're going on a different waffling now, and you're like, what are these guys talking about? Can we get back to the Microsoft Security Score? I apologize. I go on these rants sometimes. Um, but speaking of the Microsoft Security Score, the best part of the time, let's go on a live demo now. So I have got one of my, I run another company. So Blackguard is one of the companies I run, and I run another company called Skyrunner. It's a boring other company. I won't bore you with it. But here's the Microsoft Security Score. And just, I suppose, just to show you how I get here, if you literally just Google Microsoft Security Score and you click on the first link, it'll come up with this Microsoft page and talk about the security score. And when I hit the Get Started option, it will take me to this location here. And then on here is a link to go to the Microsoft Security Score. And a whole bunch of information, somewhat technical, somewhat boring. I'm going to run through it, but a whole bunch of information of the Microsoft Security Score, what we're going to talk about today, how it works, and some of the products or areas, I suppose, what's included in the Microsoft Security Score. So like I mentioned earlier, we're talking about in Microsoft, in that universe, the different areas and the different products that you can have in Microsoft, Teams, SharePoint, email, etc. And this security score is supposed to cover everything or give you a list of recommendations on how to protect all these areas to protect you as a whole within Microsoft. Let me just move this. There we go. And here's what it looks like here. So I suppose the other way, just to show you very quickly, here's how you get to it. Like I said, Google the security score. The other way to get to it, and this always changes, honestly, like every time in Microsoft. So by the time you watch this video, literally in 3 months' time, the link should exist in Google, but if you try and find it on the back end, it may go somewhere again. But the actual way to find it on the back end is this link up here, security.microsoft.com, and then expand investigation and response, and then click on security score. But like I said, if you in 3 months' time, Microsoft are just renowned for changing the location here. So I just find if I Google it, that link is always updated, so it's an easy way to find it. And shortly, because Josh done one of these recently as well, we're all over this, I'm going to get Josh to kind of detail some of the things and the steps in place here. But just to show you what I'm talking about, right? So it gives us a score out of 100%. So out of everything that we do in Office 365, it's going to give us a score for how secure we are. And there's like a whole bunch of checks, right? I think what, 54? I think no, 64. So 53 things that we've done out of a total of 64. And I can view all these checks of like what am we talking about? Like what actions should I take to protect myself? And let's just have a look of what it's talking about. So for example, one of the checks is only invited users should be automatically attended to Teams meetings. And that should be ticked. So you know when you have a Teams meeting and you send a link by email and you hope that only the people in that email attend, but then there's actually some kind of funny YouTube videos in this. The link gets shared and some bad actor gets a hold of that link and then they join that meeting and they cause havoc in one of these professional board meetings. And it's you get some funny videos. It is, I guess, a security concern, but that's what it's talking about here. That's one of the checks, right? Make sure that only the users that are allowed in Teams meetings that I invite can actually participate. And there's a whole bunch of checks that it's talking about here about enabling multi-factor authentication, and it dances around towards the different products, and we can see what product it relates to on the right hand side. And it's talking about all these different things in Office 365 that we have access to, right? Conditional access policies. So if I'm accessing my email over my smartphone or over a web browser, I want to make sure two-factor is enforced. So I definitely want to make sure that's in place. And we can see the score here. Some are more important than others, right? So the score impact is 10% on enabling user risk profiles. And if I log in from a geographical location when it's expecting that I'm in Australia, that it stops that action. So that's pretty important. And we can tell it is because it's got a way higher score than something like that Teams link we spoke about, where only the invited people can join, which is only 3% of the total score. We can see the metrics and the trends as well. It's sort of funny. There's one trend that I can see here once this loads. I want to show up. I'm not really sure why they have it here. It kind of makes me laugh every time I see it. But what it says, this comparison trend, it says, all right, your score is 82.81%. Organizations of a similar size are 54.6%. Now, I guess that's bragging rights, like, hey, let's go to like a barbecue. What's your secure score? 54%. Oh, well, mine's 82.81%. You know what I mean? Like it is kind of funny, right? So I mean, again, I don't know why they show the comparison of it, but I suppose if your score is lower than organizations of a similar size, maybe you'll be shamed into increasing your secure score to get better. I don't know, Josh. Can you think of another reason why they would put that there? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, other than bragging rights. um, yeah, so basically, this just indicates how well your security score is compared to like other organizations. Because I've noticed, because when I worked on it, I noticed that a lot of organizations they only had like maybe 35 to 38% security score, which is pretty bad. And that only goes to show that a lot of businesses, a lot of organizations don't really pay that much attention to their security, right? And it's really, really important. So, having a high security score, I mean, you can brag all you want, because that just means that you're like way better than any of these businesses, and that means that you care about the cybersecurity of your business.
And that's a great point as well, because I have also noticed that like when we set up Office 365, one of our customers, and then we sign up a couple of email addresses and put some data in OneDrive, I have found right off the bat that the security score, if you do nothing, the security score is around 30 to 35%. Like when you create Office 365, it is naturally at a low security score, right? And the question might be for our participants, the question might be is, well, why is that? Like, why isn't that 100%? Why don't they just implement all the checks, all the recommendations, and keep myself secure? Like, why do they make me do this stuff? And it's a good question, and I have an answer for it. And there's some ways I can understand why Microsoft does it, and there are some ways maybe I understand why they don't do it. So the reason why they don't put you at 100% is some of these checks may affect your systems, right? So I think in one of these recommendations is like, hey, make sure you're at this certain level of encryption for your email system, and make sure you disable this level of encryption, so because this is insecure. And if Microsoft go ahead and just do all of that and implement it, there is most likely a scenario that they're going to affect in some way your systems. If you're connecting to an application or something that relies on this older technology, as much as it shouldn't, it's possible. And Microsoft came down and said, right, hammer approach, we're going to make sure you're super secure, and we're going to make it as restrictive as possible, you can bet your bottom dollar that many businesses are going to be affected, right? Because people use different things, they use different applications, and times that by millions of Microsoft customers, then all of a sudden they've got a lot of people who can't work potentially, and I would imagine a lot of people would move off to another platform to do that. So Microsoft, I suppose, take the opposite approach and go, all right, well, we're going to give you the tool set, right? We're going to tell you how to get secure, and here's how to do it, and here's the recommendations, and they're pretty good as well because they go through the implementation and they tell us here's how to do it. Like, and some of this stuff is pretty technical depending on the step, but here's the next steps of what you've got to do. And if you don't know what we're talking about, click on this link and you'll learn more about it. And you'll probably go down a rabbit hole because there's a lot of information in this stuff. But at least they give you the tool set on how to increase the security score. So the position that they take really is, well, when you create Office 365 and join us, I wouldn't say that you're insecure, but there is work to be done, right? So there is work to be done because the score is naturally going to be around 30% unless you take steps to identify this. And I'm a little bit annoyed by Microsoft because this isn't really highlighted, right? I mean, I'm not going to outright and say this and say, hey, we're not super secure unless you make it. That would be bad for the PR and bad for business. Um, and I also think some steps should be implemented. There are definitely some steps in here that could be implemented that wouldn't actually affect, I think, anyone, right? So maybe an example: restrict anonymous users from joining meetings. Well, is it going to be a scenario where we want anonymous users from joining meetings? I don't know. I can't think of one, but I'm like I said before, I'm sure there are some people out there, right, who are like, wait a minute, I have people connecting from, I don't know, from some location who want to be anonymous. Actually, when I'm thinking about this more so now, actually, when I'm talking about it, that might be true. Like, we have a client who runs a domestic violence accommodation center, so they need anonymity when they join a meeting. So yeah, look, you know what? I suppose now that I've actually talked myself back, so there probably would be a requirement here to say, well, maybe I don't want this check, which I guess sort of segues sort of a little bit to my next comment on, should we be aiming for 100% security score? Should we be always 100%? And the answer is, I think no. I think the answer shouldn't be no. So there should be no, because it depends on the organization. And the example I just gave then about restricting anonymous users, there may be times when we want that in place. There may be a legitimate business case reason where we need people to remain anonymous in joining meetings. So we wouldn't implement that particular check, which of course wouldn't bring our score to 100%. But that's okay. I don't know, Josh. Does that sound fair to you? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, aiming for 100%, that's really not ideal because there are a lot of items that are very, very restrictive and could, affect your business. Like, for example, there was a setting there that would immediately block phishing emails, but sometimes, Microsoft or like other security software would just flag an email as phishing when it's not, right? So it's better if we just put it in quarantine first so we can review it rather than just immediately blocking it, you know. And just like what you mentioned, like when you restrict anonymous users from joining meetings or accessing SharePoint or whatnot, because sometimes if businesses have clients that are not comfortable with sharing their information, or if they're not comfortable with logging in with their personal email addresses or other email addresses, yeah, we would need a little bit of leeway for them. So yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It is sort of funny as well. So like I can see here there's 64 points, 53 out of 64. And the next part, I hope I'm not going to break the hearts of our participants, because 64, things to do doesn't seem like a lot in the grand scheme of things, which it's kind of not. But how this score is calculated is based on what Office 365 product you have access to. So what do I mean by that? So for example, under this company, so my company Skyrunner there's a couple of users, and I have the Microsoft 365 Business Basic license. And all that really means that I can access online, OneDrive, SharePoint, and my email, and I think a couple of other products inside here as well. The online version, OneNote, Microsoft Teams, but only the online version. So I can't download these products to my workstation and install it. The Business Basic license doesn't allow for that. And there is a lot of licenses in Microsoft, like a lot of licenses, right? So not to bore everyone too much, there's the Microsoft Business Standard, there's the Power Pro, there's heaps of products in Office 365, and there's like, I don't know, there's probably about over 100 licenses, I think, of add-ons of what you can do in 365. And so if I increase my license, right? So let's say Office 365 Business Premium, which is more of an advanced license. I think it's about $40 a month. And when I purchase my license for myself for that one, I get access to a whole bunch of products. Now, guess what happens with the security score? All of a sudden, because I've got a whole bunch of access to different products, there's a whole amount of different areas that I've got to protect and secure now as well. So you might see it goes 64 points to about 250 points, depending on how many users you have and depending on the type of licenses that you have. So I just wanted to highlight that, if you're using 365 and you're in that universe and everything you do is in that world, and you're really utilizing it, which is awesome, there is different and more areas for you to protect. And I just want to highlight that. I wish as well, oh my God, I wish I could say as well that once you achieve these points, you're going to be secure for the rest of your life. Technology will not move. You get from the 64 points to 100%. Oh my God, kick back, relax, don't do anything else. You're safe. OMG, I wish I could say that. But like all things, and I shouldn't complain, I suppose. Hey, Josh, I suppose what keeps us in the job. But as we all know, technology, moves at such a fast pace. And I think Microsoft generally release each month. They do their checks, and then they say, well, actually, we've got some additional steps based on the attacks we've seen and based on the technology out there. Today we've got 64 points you've got to achieve. You're 100%. If you're at 64, next month they might say, look, we've actually released 3 additional steps inside our universe. We've found some areas that you should look at. So now you're on 67 points, which might bring your score down to 95%, right? So it's one of those things, like, I guess cybersecurity is one of those things that you've got to remain vigilant on at all times. There is never an evergreen scenario where you run to the list and that's it, kick back on your heels. Which it can be annoying, right? Because you and like we have a hard enough time as it is, right, Josh, keeping up with the latest. And I do feel sorry for businesses where this isn't their primary area of focus, right? They're not IT companies, or they're not in cybersecurity, and a lot of the times they don't know what they don't know, and they're just focusing on their core business. And this thing called security in the background, well, it needs attention, and it needs pretty important attention, because if you get breached in some way, it's super bad for business. but it is such a fast-moving world, faster than what I ever remember, that it can be hard to keep pace. And I'm saying that from the IT company, not to spook people, but I'm saying from the IT company, yeah, we've got to remain vigilant at all times, and that requires constant kind of research from our side and making sure we're across the latest trends and all sorts of this stuff as well. If that makes sense. I was going to keep it short and sweet and jump to Q&A for a second. But Josh, I mean, anything I've said, do you want to jump in? Do you have any other comments, queries, questions, things you want to share on what we're talking about?
Yeah. So you mentioned about um purchasing a better subscription to have like better security scores, right? I found that the Microsoft Defender P1 is most of the time it's all you need to reach like a decent threshold, like 75%. And it's pretty affordable too. So for like if you're running a business, what's $3 a month to improve your security, right?
Yeah, and that's a great point because I remember we spoke about it recently with a client we increased their score on, and so correct me if I'm wrong, there was the security score, but you couldn't. So even though it said you have to do these checks to increase your score, you couldn't actually
Yeah,
do that unless you purchased the $3 add-on, the Defender P1 add-on license. If that sounds right.
yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, so I mean, that's pretty funny, isn't it? Like, it's like, hey, here's a whole bunch of things how to protect yourself. Oh, by the way, pay $3. There's this P1 license which helps keep you secure. And I suppose in the grand scheme of things, that it's $3, so it's not a lot, but it is interesting that you couldn't increase the score unless that was in place from Microsoft. It's here's a list of things to do, and I suppose that at least they give a roadmap right on how to do it. Um, is the Office 365 like is the secure score is it the end all be all? Well, we're talking about Office 365, which a lot of people use as their bread and butter. It doesn't really talk about things on the local workstation, right? So it doesn't necessarily talk about, hey, make sure I think it's called the least privilege access. So make sure that if you've got staff members, well, they shouldn't have the ability to install any application nilly willy, and that's more of a workstation issue. So and like I sort of briefly touched on before with the different security standards out there, there is a lot of standards out there. Is this secure score? Is it the end all be all? No, it's not, but it is a part of the overall pie, right? It's really a layered approach. It's the part of the overall picture where we've got to secure the Office 365 stuff, and there's a separate area to secure workstations, secure people, and there's also the training, of course, behind it, right? So your organization might have this thing where you've got what's called these phishing simulations, where once every 3 months, as an example, you send a phishing email to all your staff, and it looks pretty legitimate, and they click on the link, and you see who types in their email and password, and then the owner of the company gets a report saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, Jane and Tom have fallen for this phishing simulation." The secure score is not going to talk about that here. That's sort of another area, but I think this is a major part, major part of the overall security. And if you implemented all these steps, and I like to say get above 75% at a minimum, I think that's a good benchmark to go by. It certainly goes a long way in helping to make sure that you're on the right track in keeping your data, your people safe online. Fair statement to make, Josh?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, a lot of business, like based on the data that we got, a lot of business don't pay attention to their security score, but you know, like just having your score above 75% means that you're a cut above the rest, right?
Yeah, it does, and that's an odd thing to realize as well, right? That is an odd thing to realize that yeah, if we go by this stat, and there's no reason why I don't believe it, but if we go by this stat here that I've got one business basic license, and also I've done work increasing my score, and I think it was around 45 or 40% when I first signed up to 365. But it is a spooky stat. Like organizations of a similar size at 54%, which is their secure score, and 54%, as we all know, isn't a high score. It's borderline. Like it's and it needs work. And yeah, and if we logged into one of our customers portal, and we've seen this before, right? And we go, what's the organizations of similar sizes with maybe 10 staff or 20 staff? That score drops, right? So because they've got more moving parts, that score goes from 54% to we've seen it 25%, 30%, 20. I think I saw 11% once. And but the average score of organizations of a similar size is generally low. Like people, yeah, a lot of companies don't really pay attention. Or I guess not. I don't like to badmouth anyone. I hate putting anyone under the bus, but I always say we're the custodians of our customers' data, right? So if we're not looking at this, and if we're not looking at this, then we really should be. And I've seen before, and the sort of the unfortunate thing is that to get access to this area, the Microsoft Security Score, to get access to this area, you have to have a role, right, called the global administrator, which is a role to say that I've got access to all my things on the back end. I can view these things. So to get to here, you have to have that role. And generally speaking, if your 365 was created by an IT company or someone else, as a rule of thumb, you reserve that role for the administrator of the Office 365 tenancy. And I've seen before, I guess we sort of do it as a bit of a marketing thing, right? We're like, hey, here's a link, click to the Microsoft Security Score, see how secure you are. And they always come back and you go, Matt, I don't have access. And they go, right, so you've actually got to just ask the person who created your Office 365, you've got to ask them for the global administrator and then go to this score. And we've gone on clients before, right? And I've seen it, right, where the IT company will log in and go, oh boy, it's at 25%. If I give them the access and they go to the secure score, it's going to make me look bad. And look, with good reason. And so what I see all the time, right, is you go to the history and there's like a flurry of activity over the last week of like, oh, let's read these recommendations, let's go through it. Like there's a flurry of activity to get from 25 to 75%. And that's sort of, to appease them. So I like to say, try and get a screenshot and include the date and time of when that secure score was taken. I'm not trying to catch anyone in the act, right? But it's just something to note. And I suppose if you want to see your own score, the people on this webinar, is just ask for the global administrator password. Maybe don't mention, right, if someone else set it up, that you're looking for the secure score, but ask for the global administrator password, get access to your account, and then go to the secure score, just so you can, for your own peace of mind, you're not giving anyone a heads up, and you're going to go there to check it out, right? I think that's a fair statement. Any IT company shouldn't have anything to hide, right? So something I've just seen before in the past. Sorry, team. I promised. I know there was 50 minutes of Q&A, but there you go again. I get on my high horse and I waffle on, so I apologize about that. But I do want to, I guess, share the room now I'll just bring up the slide again to Q&A for the participants in this team. Happy to answer any questions in the chat, questions, queries. Maybe just want to say, Matt, can you just stop getting in your high horse? Can you just talk about the product? And God, you just go on these roundabout discussions, don't you? I'll give it a couple of minutes. We've got to 10:45, but we'll. Great. So the question is, hey, Matt, I have the advanced version of Business 365. Would I automatically have Defender included? Great question. It depends on what version you have. So, for example, the advanced version, and this is just my assumption, the advanced version generally of an Office 365 license is called the Office 365 Business Premium license. If you have that license, then yes, you will have the Defender included. The Office 365 Business Premium has that included. If you have the Office 365 Business Standard, which is the advanced version, then no. And the way to tell what license you have is if you go to, and I'm going to put a link inside the chat here, which is office.com, and then if you sign in with your email address, and then you click on the admin on the left-hand side, and then you go to users or users, you can see your account and what license is assigned to it. That's one way to find it. So if you've got Business Premium, yes. If you've got anything else, then no. A great question. Any more questions, team? No worries. Thanks, Melissa. I appreciate that. Well, team, I think that's it. And yeah, look, any questions or queries? Here's our details on the screen now. We've got the QR code because I'm a LinkedIn fiend. I love LinkedIn. I'm all over it. Here's my QR code if you want to take a photo of that. Connect with me on LinkedIn. You can never have too many friends on LinkedIn. Said no one ever, right? So go ahead and add me. Love the idea there. Or there's my details as well. If you've got any questions on today, just want to reach out, email me. And if you've got any questions, if you need someone to look at the score, we're an IT company, like I mentioned before, we are more than happy to assist. And certainly want to thank you, Josh, as well, for your time today when I literally roped you in the last minute and sink or swim, and you swam swimmingly, Josh. So thanks for your time as well. All right, team. That's it. Well, everyone have a great day and have a great day and take care. See you later.